On today's show, Singapore wages war on salt in a new national strategy to get us making healthier choices. And 3 national swimmers received their punishment after admitting to consuming cannabis. It's Wednesday, September 28th. You're watching The Big Story with me, Chiao Su-en. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel to stay up to date with our live news updates. Now, salt is an ingredient that we add to just about every recipe, from fried rice to chicken curry and even chocolate chip cookies. We just can't seem to get enough of it, and that is becoming a problem. But there is more than one type of salt in the market, and there are plans for more healthier options in the near future. Our question is, does it taste as good? I picked my saltiest colleague Haryanto, and we put these salts and my culinary skills to the test. So for the taste test, we picked 3 different types of salt. The common categories of salt are table salt, natural salt, and low sodium salt. For the table salt option, we picked this very commonly used packet which costs 50 cents for one. Most families should be familiar with this. For natural salt, we picked a Himalayan rock salt, which cost us $2.60 for this packet. And for our low sodium and supposedly healthier option, we picked the good salt. Now, the low sodium option is supposed to be the healthiest, but does it taste as good as the others? So these are the fries that we air fried earlier. Each of these bowls have a different salt in them. But Jan doesn't know which color corresponds to what type of salt. So I guess we'll be doing a fairly neutral taste test. Okay, but for the record, right, we put an equal amount of salt in each bowl. So they should be all equally salty.
I just don't taste the salt in it.
You're right.
It's definitely more bland, more subtle than the other two. The other two are more flavorful.
See, I'm surprised because, and now I'll review to you, this is actually the common table salt that we're used to.
Oh.
So you would think that being the most unhealthy would taste the best.
But could it be because then you can't taste the salt, therefore you put in more salt, which is then, unhealthy?
Maybe.
Right?
So do you want to guess between these two? There's one you liked more and one you liked a little bit less. Do you want to guess which one is the good salt?
I'm really hoping that the good salt is the one that tastes better. So I would say this is the good salt.
This is the good salt.
Oh no!
But it's ironic because this I actually felt was the saltiest.
Yes, it is. Which then again, if let's say we had gone with that theory that, I've said, then that means you don't need a lot of salt because the flavor is there.
So you put less because it's more salty?
Yeah, perhaps.
No. Maybe ease your way into it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can ask, the viewers what they think.
Yes, what do you think? Would you, for $4.50, pay for a healthier and I think equally good tasting salt? Well, I think now we're going to just chomp on some fries.
Yes, I am going to go for the yummy one. So the yummy one is
the Himalayan
one, yes.
And that was the result of our very, very unscientific taste test. I'd say I was pretty surprised that despite adding equal amounts of salt to each bowl, to me, the good salt tasted the saltiest. And speaking of surprising, here's a shocking statistic. Singaporeans consume, on average, 2 times the level of sodium recommended by the World Health Organization. Along with the growing sodium intake, there is a rising prevalence of hypertension, a major risk factor for stroke and cardiovascular diseases. In a new initiative announced today, Singapore aims to reduce sodium intake by about 15% over 5 years. One of the strategies is encouraging the use of lower sodium salt in place of regular salt and working with retailers to make these substitutes more affordable. A new lower sodium salt product, K-Salt, will be available progressively at some supermarket chains such as NTUC FairPrice and Sheng Siong from early October onwards. And joining us now to discuss the war on salt is Rahayu Mazam, Senior Parliamentary Secretary for Health. Thanks for joining us today, Rahayu. So who is this message targeted at? Is it the hawkers, the home cooks, or basically anyone who dines out a lot or consumes a lot of takeaways?
Thanks, Suen, for the question. And thank you for having me here. Actually, this message is for everyone because as Singaporeans, we have a very high sodium intake and it's a cause for concern. On average, Singaporeans consume 3,600 milligrams of sodium a day, and that is close to 2 teaspoons of salt a day. This is almost 2 times the recommendations by WHO, and that is something that's worrying because high consumption of salt actually leads to hypertension, which actually causes stroke and cardiovascular diseases. So this is of concern to us. When we talk about actually sending this message, and when I say it's a message for everyone, because we all consume food, in various forms. We cook our own food, we cook our own meals. Sometimes we get takeouts, sometimes we eat in a restaurant. So everyone in that whole ecosystem plays a part and a role in actually managing this issue and helping to see if we can all do our part in reducing sodium consumption in our meals. And that's something that I hope we can share with everyone and have people play a role in strengthening this message to the community.
So considering how much sodium we're taking now, cutting sodium intake by just 15% over 5 years sounds like quite a small reduction to me. Do you expect this to translate into significantly fewer cases of hypertension? Or how much impact do you think the strategy will have?
Actually, so when in coming up with this benchmark or target, we look at two things. Firstly, it's the benchmarking against international precedents, because there are other countries have done this. And from our observation, those countries that have documented success of around 13 to 22% of reduction in the population took about 8 to 10 years. And so relatively, our target of 15% over 5 years is actually a very reasonable target. And there's actually a lot of clinical and population studies that show that actually incremental reduction of sodium significantly reduces blood pressure and mitigates age-related issue in blood pressure. And this is regardless of the individual's baseline sodium intake. So in other words, just reducing it already has significant population health benefits. For example, there's a multi-country study published by the World Health Organization in 2007, which included Asian countries like China, Indonesia, and Thailand. And it was found that 15% reduction in mean sodium intake reduces the risk of death from cardiovascular diseases by 7%. And in a local study by NUS Saw Swihawk School of Public Health, the reduction of salt intake by 2 grams or 1/3 of a teaspoon per day has been projected to lead to a substantial number of disability-adjusted life years or dailies averted, amounting to 4,000 dailies annually. So one daily represents the loss of 1 year of healthy life. So there are significant improvements in just actually reducing it incrementally. Of course, we all want to do better, and that's something that we will continue to work on. But realistically, we have to start somewhere, and we want to have a target that is reasonable and practical, and giving time for us to build the ecosystem to reach this meaningful goal.
That sounds like a very reasonable target to me. And it's also very hopeful to know that even just a small change can have such a significant impact on our health. But Singaporeans have been encouraged to cut down on sugar, and now we want them to cut down on salt as well. How do you convince us as a nation whose favorite pastime is eating that this is the right thing to do? What are some challenges that you predict we might face?
Yes, indeed. So, and that's a challenge because as Singaporeans, we love our food, we're proud of it. Our favorite pastime is eating. But eating healthily and cutting down on sugar or salt should not or need not lessen our enjoyment in any way. In fact, dishes cooked using lower sodium salt does not compromise taste. And this is something that I can confirm with you because I've recently done a blind test taste with Minister Ong, and you really can't tell the difference between food that is cooked with low sodium salt. And now we are actually working towards creating a variety of these options. There are many healthier choice products and dishes in the market that are lower in sugar and salt and are still flavorful. So we will continue with this public education efforts to raise awareness on the effects of high salt intake and educate the public on available lower sodium options. In a way, we are creating an ecosystem where it's easier for people to have access to healthier choices, that they are informed when they go out to choose their food, lower sodium identifiers at F&B stalls, and also lower in salt health healthier choice symbols that are in the packaging of ingredients. All these will go towards creating awareness and allowing people to be more informed about the decisions they make on their food. Honestly, all change is going to come with a bit of difficulty. People are going to have some trouble adjusting, but that's why we're encouraging incremental change. And, taste buds change over time. When we start encouraging eating something that's less salty, with less sugar, you would realize, and anecdotally you would notice, people will say, yeah, over time, I don't think that I need sugar anymore. So at the end of the day, we need to remember, this is for the health of Singaporeans. We are looking at making small changes that we can continue to inculcate in our day-to-day living, change people's habits to have healthier lifestyle, to have healthier habits. When they have healthier lifestyle, they do better health, wise, and that means that we can all work towards a generation of Singaporeans that's healthy and are able to, seize opportunities in the day. So I hope that's something Singaporeans will work together with us on, and I'm sure we can all achieve this goal if we work together.
And having tried the low sodium salt options myself, I must say you're absolutely right. I barely tasted the difference. Thank you so much for the encouraging words, Rahayu. This has been Rahayu Mazam, Senior Parliamentary Secretary for Health.
Thank you, Suen.
It has emerged that Joseph Schooling and Amanda Lim are not the only swimmers in hot water for illegal drug use. Sport Singapore has issued warnings to the two swimmers, along with a third national swimmer, Tiong Tien Wei. The trio had been investigated by the Central Narcotics Bureau for drug-related offences, but all their urine tests for controlled drugs came up negative. However, all three confessed to consumption of said drugs while they were representing Singapore overseas. SportSG will suspend all support to the trio under the High Performance Scheme for a period of 1 month, beginning from October 1st. This means they will not receive training assistant grants and access to sports science and sports medicine facilities and services in this period. Tiong, who is seen as a rising star in the pool, will also have his scholarship benefits withdrawn for a month.
He certainly has had a breakthrough year. He wasn't the most motivated or by his own confession, hardworking athlete, but he had a good SEA Games, became the first Southeast Asian to go under 22 seconds in the 50-meter freestyle event when he won gold in Hanoi. He then went to qualify for the final in the 50-meter fly at the World Championship in Budapest, becoming just the third Singaporean man after Ang Peng Siong and Joseph Schooling to reach a final at the World Championships. He also excelled at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham in July and won silver in the 50-meter fly. The special thing about Tiong is that he was trained exclusively locally. He did not go to the US route as many of his peers at the elite level in Singapore have. And so he was touted as proof that world-class talent could be developed on our own shores. I think many are hoping this misstep will not affect his trajectory in the pool going forward.
Police investigations are ongoing into a 37-year-old man who was arrested for allegedly making a bomb threat on board a Singapore Airlines flight. MINDEF later verified the threat to be false. The flight SQ-33 from San Francisco landed safely in Singapore early this morning. The Straits Times understands the man arrested is a foreign national. He was arrested for making false threats of terrorist acts and for suspected consumption of controlled drugs. Under anti-terror rules, it is an offence for a person to make false claims about carrying out an act of terrorism. Those found guilty can be punished with a maximum fine of $500,000 or a maximum jail term of 10 years or both. Visibly tired passengers from the flight appeared at the terminal at about 9:20 a.m. and they proceeded to collect their luggage. Meanwhile, an SIA spokesman said the airline is assisting customers with the rebooking for any onward connections that they may have missed. Singapore-based in-flight caterer Sept, which is also the main ground handler at Changi Airport, is proposing to buy a Paris-based air cargo handler, Worldwide Flight Services, for 1.19 billion euros. If shareholders agree to go ahead, the combined group will become the world's biggest global air cargo handler. Sept said its network will cover trade routes responsible for more than half of the world's air cargo volume. And 4 Russian-occupied regions of Ukraine have voted overwhelmingly to join Russia in referendums that have been condemned by international observers as a sham. Ukraine and the West warn that the vote may lead to formal Russian annexation of the territories. Apple has dropped plans to increase production of its new iPhones after an expected surge in demand failed to materialize. People familiar with the matter telling Bloomberg News that the company has told suppliers to cut production by as many as 6 million units. Instead, Apple will aim to produce 90 million handsets in the second half of this year, nearly the same number as a year ago. Now, the return of Formula One to Singapore means road closures in and around Marina Centre and the Padang for the next 7 days. Affected roads include Nickel Highway, Beach Road and Collyer Quay. Probably best to take the bus or the train during this time until traffic flow goes back to normal by October 4th at 5:30 a.m. Meanwhile, the Marina Bay Street circuit is looking amazing already. The custom-made floodlights have been switched on, all 1,600 of them. This weekend promises to be Singapore's biggest party since 2019, and boy, am I ready for it. And those are our top stories for today. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Chao Suan, and I'll see you tomorrow on The Big Story.